What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and this is another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm back with another solo dolo episode of the pod ahead of the matchup in Dallas against the Mavericks. I hope everyone was able to enjoy the holiday season with their families and friends. I also want to give a shout out to the people that had to celebrate alone or were without their family or friends this year for whatever reason. I hope you were able to make the most of the day and give yourself some grace. It's a hard time for some folks, and I totally get that, and I can't let that go unsaid. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. Basketball. I know you guys saw the Christmas Day matchup specifically with Luka Doncic tormenting Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns once again. Luka had 50 points with 15 assists, 6 boards, 4 steals, and 3 blocks. Ooh-wee. You always love to see the birth of a rivalry that's going to be around for such a long time, and Book and Luka are two great players that could pose problems around the league for years to come. I'm personally looking forward to hopefully watching Luka in person for the first time on Wednesday, but he's listed as questionable with left quad soreness. So we'll have to wait and see on what his availability looks like on Wednesday. Unfortunately, fans won't get to see Kyrie Irving as he's out again with his heel injury. But we can't mention the Cleveland Cavaliers without Kyrie and his impact on the organization and its run in becoming the 2016 NBA champions. So today, I asked our subtext subscribers to give me their thoughts on a question that I think centers around Kyrie, the best ball handlers in the game. I asked for top 3 ball handlers in the league right now and top 3 ball handlers all time. Let's get into these responses. Obviously, I have to start with the loyal Cavs fan who said Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Karis LeVert. I mean, I get why you say that, but let's get real. The next response from Dave from PA. He said he loves this question. There's the showy stuff, and then there's having a good assist to turnover ratio and being able to dribble to your spot at will. His current top 3, no order: Kyrie, Steph, and Kawhi. He almost went with Luka. All time, no order: Isaiah Thomas, Chris Paul, and Kyrie. I think that's a good list. I'm not going to lie to you. Next, from Andrew from Cleveland Heights, he's got Kyrie, Steph, and Jamal Crawford for all time. And he has honorable mentions listed as Zeke, Pistol Pete, God Shamgod, and Rod Strickland. Man, that's a good list, Andrew. That's a good list. I can't lie. My list might look very similar to this, but we'll get to that in a little bit. He also said that Jason Williams needs to be in this conversation. White chocolate. Andrew said he loves the old school folks that can use dribble to get into shot and make you look silly. I mean, we all like to look back at Jason Williams highlights and Jamal Crawford highlights and those of that nature. I mean, just shifty players that impacted the game at a high level. And the last list that I got, all time, Isaiah Thomas, AI, Pistol Pete. Currently, Steph, Irving, and CP3. This subtexter went all in on the old school for their all time. I like it. Pistol Pete, man. Now, it only be fair if I give you my thoughts as well. In the topic of in the league currently, I'm going Kyrie, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Stephen Curry. Shai has the ball on a string at all times and is able to play his defender however he wants to. Hence why he's third in points per game in the league right now as the point guard of his team, who only averages 3 3-point attempts a game. So he's creating on the inside and getting his teammates involved as well. Steph's shot makes his dribbling even more of a problem because we all know that Stephen Curry is one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter of all time. He's able to move off the ball, but he's no slouch with the ball in his hands. And you always got to be wary of him putting it up. So dribble drives, dribble moves, all those different things are impacted because of how good he is at shooting the ball. If I had to give an honorable mention, instead of saying Kyrie twice, he's also going to be in my all-time list. I'd say De'Aaron Fox because he's 6'3", averages 3 made threes in a game, and is sixth in the league in scoring. And his blitzing speed is just a cheat code on defense. He's got to be able to keep the rock on his pocket. Now, all time gets a little tricky, but I think Kyrie Irving is the best ball handler of all time because of how he can get anything he wants on any possession. It seems like his dribbling ability is art because of how he's reacting to what the defender does rather than having a set move picked out for each time down the floor. It's like a dance. Then I have to give respect to the OG in Jamal Crawford. I mean, he brought street basketball and won, you name it. Jamal was doing things that the NBA couldn't fathom and was making defenders look silly. It was ridiculous. And then speaking of making defenders look silly, you always got to mention this guy in this conversation, especially just because of what he did to some people consider the best player in the world ever in Michael Jordan. And that's what Allen Iverson does with his killer crossover. The answer. If you couldn't tell, I'm a hard over height kind of guy. Being able to create at a smaller stature is increasingly impressive as players continue to grow in the league, like having somebody at 7'4" and Victor Wembanyama manning the paint, and still being able to create around the rim like AI and Kyrie and Jamal Crawford were all known for. They're giant slayers. And hanging and finishing at the rack is something that comes with being able to put the ball on the floor and get into that position. So those are my top three for the league right now and all time. I'm going to let that marinate with y'all. You can argue with me on subtext if you'd like, but I'm going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to discuss if the era of the super team is dying. But before then, become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and I by subscribing to Subtext. For folks in Dallas, this is where you can send me food recommendations and I can get back to you with Keith Lee type ratings. So do me a solid and sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from myself and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through subtext. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Let's talk about these super teams. And I think we can consider Dallas a super team with having Luka and Kyrie paired together. And fans were skeptical of this pairing as they went just 3-7 in their first 10 games together on the floor. And Kyrie has gotten a bad rap around the league as since he's left Cleveland, he's bounced around from Boston, where he teamed up with rookie Jason Tatum, to Brooklyn, where he teamed up with Kevin Durant and James Harden, to now joining Luka in Dallas, which has turned around and they're 18-12 this season. Looking around the league, super teams feel to be getting a bad reputation, or the teams aren't getting to where they were expected to as quickly as they should. The Phoenix Suns this year, with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. Sure, they have been without Beal for a majority of this season, but they're sitting under 500 right now. Some people consider Kevin Durant one of the best scorers of all time and Devin Booker an uprising star. I think a lot of fans don't like what they're seeing and are already calling for Kevin Durant to get traded. But moving on. Then you have the Clippers, who most thought the group of Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard wasn't going to work because there's one basketball. And at first, it didn't look that way. But now, they're one of the hottest teams in the NBA. Looking at the other LA team, the Lakers have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They've already won a championship, but it's consistently brought up that the bubble title wasn't a true chip. And then there's some players saying that the bubble was the hardest chip to get. And now you have the in-season tournament championship, which they hung a banner up for. Players around the league are also saying that that doesn't count as a title. And most of those critiques, I believe, come because LeBron is being mentioned and is linked to those championships. Who knows? And then you look at the Cavs with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley, young up and coming stars. I can't tell you how many times this season I've heard from fans for the team to just blow it up and trade everybody, especially with them all being injured right now and the Cavs somehow being able to grind out wins. Here's my take on this situation. All of these teams understand that they have high caliber players that can all impact individuals' teams at a high rate. But the importance is letting them mesh and gel together. Like the Clippers had to figure out with four ball dominant guards how to share the wealth. And they've adapted quicker than anyone could have imagined. It was never a question of the talent level, but how they'd work together. And I think the same goes for the Cavs. It's rumored that Donovan Mitchell could be gone after this season to keep his value high in a trade. But my question would be, what would fans be happy with receiving in return that wouldn't jeopardize the salary cap for the Cavs? The other thing is, the Cavs have a whole other year before his contract is up. So why wouldn't the team wait another year when at least two players at a time aren't injured and they can truly evaluate how good this team can be? Saying this, already knowing that the Cavs were able to get to the first round of the playoffs last year and they have a better roster than they did last year in this season after adding more depth, which has been on full display in the star players' absence, and it should show that the bench, when they return, will be able to hang with teams' A lineups for stretches, not at a consistent basis, but for stretches, because they're doing it right now. Do I think that this narrative could change over the next two games with facing the Mavericks and the Bucks? Yes, especially if Luka is able to go, and we'll have to see how Giannis and Jarrett Allen go head to head. But I also think everyone on the Cavs has stepped up immensely. But I also think everyone on the Cavs has stepped up, and Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade will accept defensive challenges and gut it out, especially against somebody like Luka or Damian Lillard or players of that caliber. So is the age of the super team dying? I think teams are realizing that the individual players can make impacts, but they need a system to incorporate multiple pieces to be successful, which takes time. So if they keep swapping players and trying to find pieces to fit rather than fixing the system, then I think it would be heading downhill and towards the way of thinking that individual players can make a better impact. But we'll have to wait and see. And just like with the Cavs, we'll have to wait and see what happens with Donovan Mitchell and what the team is willing to not only give up, but how long they're willing to wait to see if this team can be successful with the pieces that they went out and got to create a supportive cast around Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen, and also including Max Strus with that starting lineup. With all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and I by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from myself and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast, and the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.